of statistics. Statistics is where you first ask a question, collect data, analyze it, summarize the data, analyze the data, interpret the data, and then answer your question. Of course, there's more to it than that. And so I want to go through the process we go through for doing statistics. First off, if you're going to ask a question, you must have some idea of who that question is about. So that's actually known as our unit of observation. The unit of observation is the object or individual that you're asking questions about. So let's start off with a question. Let's get an example of a question. Let's say my question is, what is the average house price in Flagstaff, Arizona? So that's the question I'd like to know. So in this case, your object, your unit of observation, and these are when we say unit of observation, they're not like measurement units. These are just what object, what item, what value, what thing you're measuring. And so in this case, we want to actually look at houses. So in this case, our unit of observation is just a house in Flagstaff, Arizona. And so these objects can be lots of different things depending on what you measure. They could be a house in this case, it could be a person, it could be a country, it could even be a year, it could be an animal, it could be lots of different things that you could think about measuring, depending again on your question. So now that we know what our question is, and now we know what our question what our unit of observation is. I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger so you can actually read it. Um, we can actually from here figure out what our next step is. So now that we know what this is, we can kind of get an idea of tell our reader kind of what we're dealing with and what we want to measure. So in this case, your variable is the quantity or quality that you want to measure. So that's all a variable is kind of what the quantity or quality is you want to measure. In this example, our variable would be the price because that's what I want to measure. So one thing I should mention about this is that normally when we go to measure this, when I go to measure the price of a house, I wouldn't just look at just the price of a house. I might also want to look at the square footage of the house and how many bedrooms it has and how many bathrooms it has and the slot sizes on and the year it was built. And so these are all different things I may want to know about the house that I could also collect. So my data set I'm going to collect is probably going to have all of these different variables in it. But the price is the one I'm actually more interested in. So I want to think about that's the one I'm interested in, but there will be other variables I will measure. Once we have that, we can then get an idea of what we want to actually get with and what we want to actually be studying. And that's where a population comes into place. The population also tells your reader and yourself what you're measuring and whom you're measuring it from. So the population is a set or collection of the variable And it could be more than one variable, so you could have lots of variables measured from all the units of observation. So as an example of this, in this example, it would be the set of house prices of all houses in Flagstaff, Arizona. So that's would be what that would be, is what those all are involving in. And that would tell my reader what I'm going to measure from them. And it would tell myself what variable I'm measuring. And it would also tell me um what I'm measuring them from, what object I'm using, what my unit is that I'm dealing with. In this case, it's a unit of a house. Notice, by the way, if we go back for just a second, that this unit of observation was just a house, not a bunch of them, just one single house. That's what I'm measuring. That's that unit I'm going to measure. And then when I get into the population, I'm going to do it for all of them. A census is where I'm actually going to measure for all of them. So the census is where we actually collect that variable or variables. Again, usually we don't just measure one from all of the units of observation. So a census is where you actually have collected it from every single solitary unit of observation. You've gotten your entire population. So a census is where you've collected it from the entire population. Now, the problem with a census is it's not really easy to do. I don't have a way to get every single house that's for sale in Flagstaff, Arizona. I can look at the ones that are currently on the market, but I want to actually know for every house that's for sale that could ever be for sale or that exists in Flagstaff. So I can't really just look at the houses that are currently on the market because those are just the ones for sale right now. Um, and so I don't know how to get necessarily how much they are. Granted, there are ways that you can estimate what you think it is. Um, but it would be kind of difficult to get this. So the census is very difficult to actually collect all of it up. Um, it's going to be taking you a lot of time. And because you probably will need people that you're going to have to pay, it'll take you a lot of money. And sometimes it's just not possible to collect the whole census. So as an example, if I were to collect the diameter breast height of every single tree in the Coconino National Forest, that would be my population, be that diameter of a breast height of all the trees in the Coconino National Forest. And if I maybe hired a ton of people, it still would take a lot of time to collect all this. And by the time I actually finished collecting them all, the trees probably would have changed in size. So I certainly wouldn't get a census in that case. There are times where you can get a census. If I want to know the average net worth of all the sitting US senators, I could do that because there's only 100 of them. That wouldn't be that hard to do. I could get that information. So we would look at that kind of information. I could do that in that case of get that census. But a lot of times I can't get a census, in which case I take what's called a sample. All a sample is a subset of the population. It basically is the exact same thing as the population, it's just smaller. So in our example that we were dealing with, let's say I'm going to measure 500 homes. So in this case, my sample would be the set of house prices of 500 homes in Flagstaff, Arizona. Notice it looks exactly the same as the population, but instead of being for all of them, it's just for those 500. And so that's kind of what our sample is. It's just a smaller collection of that giant population. Hopefully, it is actually representative of it. Um, We're going to get into how we take samples later, but you want to make sure it's representative. So you want to make sure that there's some bias not in it and so forth. So you wouldn't just go to one neighborhood and collect all the houses in that one neighborhood, because they're all going to be similar prices. So you want to make sure you're more representative of the entire community. Once we've done this and we've collected this, we're going to have a giant set. If we have the population, we're going to have this giant population. And if we don't get the entire population and can't collect it, we can think in our minds about having this giant set of numbers or values, variable values. And that's hard to look at. It's hard to look at all of those numbers or all those qualities. So what we want to do is we want to come up with what we call a parameter. And a parameter is just a number calculated from the population. And it's what we're interested in. So in this case, it would be the average house price of all houses. Again, I can't collect all this. So what we want to do is we want to find out what this number is. We can't actually find it. Normally we don't know what this number is because we can't get this giant population. So what we do instead is we take our sample, and from our sample we can calculate a number from that sample. And that's actually what a statistic is. It's just a number calculated from the sample. And we're going to use it to estimate the parameter. Again, hopefully you have a non-biased sample, so it's going to accurately estimate it. And we're going to get into how we do that. So as an example, again, in this example, this would be the average house price of only 500 homes in Flagstaff, Arizona. And again, if you've taken a good sample and you've taken a representative sample, then you'll be able to use that number to tell us what that parameter is. And those are the kind of the beginning basics of statistics.